I want Senator Johnson to know that we have the finest mayor in the state of Tennessee, bar none.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
All right, everybody. Sarah has the meeting now. Go.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to the May 15th meeting of the Brentwood Rotary Club. For those of you visiting, I am Sarah Johnson, the honored president of this fine club, and I want to thank you all for joining us today. Our invocation is going to be led by Betsy Crossley, and then our pledge and four-way test will be led by Devin McClendon. So, Betsy?
Glad to see everybody here today. Can you bow your heads, please? Thank you, dearest Father, for all you've delivered in our times of need and in our times of plenty, for the acts of healing our sickness, and for the prevention of our illness by blessing us with health, for the abundance we have in our lives to share with others in care and service, for the blessings of our own dear families, and for the family of Rotary, for the opportunities to make a positive difference in this ever-changing world. We lift up all of our members who are experiencing illness, suffering, or grief. May you hear every prayer, and at the same time, we praise you for the blessed miracles you perform every hour. Grant us wisdom, grant us patience, grant us the time we have here to serve your will. Heal those among us who are sick, those who are lonely, and those who need the loving warmth of just resting in your presence. Let us be the connection, the catalyst, and the hands of your great works. Being humbled in your presence, Lord, we ask all these things in your amazing name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Betsy. Mr. McClendon, you're up.
Yes, ma'am. If everybody would either find a flag where you are or online, you can see one there behind Mayor Little there at the City of Brentwood, and join me in the pledge to our flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States
America.
and to the republic
Public
which it
stands
one nation
under God.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very good. Thank you. And if you would now join me in the four-way test of the things we think, say, and do. First.
Is it the truth?
Second.
Does it merit all concern?
Third.
Will it build goodwill and better
friendships?
And fourth.
Will it be beneficial to all
To the
concerned?
bank.
There you go. All right, Sarah, all yours.
Thank you, Devin and Betsy. I want to open up the meeting for our guests who are with us today to introduce yourself. And we have any visiting Rotarians, please let us know you're here and also what club you're with. So I know Denise and Bob are out there. So if one of you would go first, and then any other guests, we'd love to hear from you.
This is Denise. Denise Carruthers, member of Franklin Rotary Club at Breakfast, and still currently your assistant governor for the remainder of this Rotary year. And I'm glad to be here.
Welcome, Denise.
We're glad you're here, Denise.
It is truly a great day to be a Rotarian, Brentwood Rotarians. Bob Huffman joining you from Clarksville, Tennessee. I am your sitting district governor. It's a great day to join you, and I'm happy to be with you today. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for being here, Bob. Any others? Well, all right then. I'm going to now open up the floor for Happy Bucks. As we've been doing Happy Bucks in the past, what we're going to do is go on the honor system, or you can write a check to Drew Rogers, not him personally, but do it to the Brentwood Rotary Club, and put your dollars in, or when you get back and we're all able to meet again, we can pony up at that point. So I'm opening up. Does anyone have a Happy Bucks for today?
Sarah, I'll start. I am happy today because, as those of you who may have remembered back from January, my company, we did a merger. We merged with another company back in January. And the purpose of that was mutually beneficial. And we made a pitch this week for our first major piece of business that was truly a part of each company, and we got a verbal approval yesterday that we won our pitch. So I'm happy today for successful mergers and it being beneficial to all concerned.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you, man.
Devin, are you talking about a piece of property in Maryland Farms?
No.
Okay.
No.
Who else is happy?
All right, I'll go ahead and go and say it. I know y'all are getting tired of hearing me gush about my lovely granddaughter, but Birdie got her first kiss this last weekend. So it was a light, nice, wet, gooey, wide open mouth kiss, but it made me very, very happy. So I'm putting in $5 for Happy Buds.
Thank you, Betsy. That's awesome.
I've got one, Devin.
Go for it.
All right. I just would like to say that in light of all the crisis we've gone through, I appreciate all the citizens and the overwhelming majority of them doing the right thing and trying to protect the most vulnerable and love their neighbor. But I just would have to say, in the words of Charlie Daniels, it's good to be alive and in Tennessee. So.
Yeah.
I think we all agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I've got one. I just closed the hardest deal of my entire lifetime. I closed on a travel center in San Francisco with a Chinese investor. So you just have to take that into consideration, you know. San Francisco Bay and the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, did not want us to do that deal. So there.
Well, good for you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Sarah, I'll put one out there just for fun. At the parking lot lunch earlier this week, which is comprised of all members of our club, we had our first female member attend, Jennifer Bourne, which was pretty exciting. And then we also had our first drive-by attendee, which was Lori Reed, drove by in her car and waved and talked to us. So it was quite an exciting luncheon.
That's awesome. Who else is happy? Anyone else?
Sarah, this is Larry. I'm in a happy buck. My oldest grandson will be graduating from high school next week in Dallas, Texas. And they're actually going to be in the Texas Motor Speedway. Everybody stays in their car, have a big screen, and then all the kids walk across and get their diploma. Pretty neat way to do it, and still keep everybody away from each other.
Oh, that's awesome. Are they going to film it so you can see it?
Yeah. See, we'll all be in our cars, and we'll be watching the screen.
Got it.
Yeah, we'll see what's going on. Pretty deal.
Anyone else? Well, all right then. So I want to let the club know that because I got all kinds of grief last week, I'm a good Baptist girl. And so my wine glass is full today, but it is full with grape juice.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
it is.
Smash grapes.
It's been opened. So yeah, so just to let y'all know, I'm a good Baptist today.
Is it the truth?
What's the
It's the truth. It is 100% the truth.
I'll come over and
Trust
verify
me,
it, Sarah.
because I took a sip of it and it was nasty. I don't like Kool-Aid grape juice.
You're gonna get struck by lightning.
Welcome to it.
When I was in college, we used to use Kool-Aid grape juice for something that we mixed with.
Yeah, no, Ray. No.
Get away from that window, Sarah. You're gonna get struck by lightning.
Is that called a purple?
Purple passion.
Golly, crazy.
Stay
Okay.
away to heaven.
So also want to let the club know that I've been in communication with the Martin Center, about when we can anticipate coming back into our normal meeting place, our normal routines. Of course, social distancing and that type of thing. The board is going to meet next Tuesday to discuss a plan of keeping our members safe and what we need to do before we actually all meet together in a group setting. I've asked Larry Kane to join us as well from facilities so that we can get it all set up and make sure that we are keeping our members safe, and also give you an expectation when we can all come back together again. I want to thank everyone that came out and showed their support for our Williamson Medical Center employees and EMS personnel. I'm so proud that our BRCCF was quickly able to get involved and show our love with our other Rotary clubs in Williamson County. It just meant a lot. The golf committee has decided to move this year's golf tournament from June 15th to a date later this fall. Larry Kane will be in touch with everyone with a plan for the details in the next few weeks. Just as a reminder, as things are reopening, we are asking Rotarians to do their best to obtain $500 in scholarships or in sponsorships for the golf tournament. And with it being in the fall, we'll have a little bit more time to do that and hopefully get it all and have a best year yet. Also, for some of y'all that have joined us this week that may not be in previous weeks, the Rotary Board of Directors did vote, the Brentwood Rotary Board of Directors did vote to waive the fourth quarter dues for all of our members, current members, in an effort to help those whose businesses are currently impacted with the effects of COVID-19. If you're past due on a balance, you're still going to get an invoice. And if you're able, please make an effort to try to catch up sometime this quarter. Roger Wheelwright last week made a great suggestion and suggested that if any member, current or Rule of 85, has the resources to donate their normal $275 to the BRCCF, that would help with fundraising efforts for the golf tournament and other initiatives. If you're able to donate fourth quarter dues of $275 to BRCCF, the golf committee has graciously agreed to let members have one whole sponsor for the price, which is normally $300. So if you want to spotlight someone in your family or just say thank you, or even your business, Phil, please, we would love to have you do that. I ask that you keep in your thoughts and prayers Robert and Dottie Fiddler, Roger Wheelwright, and John Stokes. I'm going to take just a minute, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, Harold, but how is Robert doing?
I stopped by his house. Can you hear me?
Yep. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I stopped by his home yesterday and chatted with him for a couple of hours. He is currently taking an infusion procedure twice a week in downtown Nashville, and has decided to work with a doctor in Florida addressing some of his issues. And Dottie's doing fine. She's maintaining her due diligence, if you will, and treating potential her cancer situation. So in the overall scheme of things, they're both coping pretty well, but I think keeping them in our prayers would be good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that update. Roger, how are you feeling?
Can you hear me?
Roger Wheelwright.
Can you hear me?
Yes. I can.
I had the results of my CAT scan, and the chemo treatment I am currently taking seems to be working. My tumors significantly reduced, which makes me happy. But the overall effect is that I'm going to have to continue for a long while. And but the doctor was let's say, put it this way, ecstatic. He did not think this was ever going to happen. So I'm doing well.
That's fantastic news.
Good.
We're so happy.
A lot of prayer.
A lot of prayers. So with that, if does anybody have any other updates that they'd like to let the club know about?
Oh, this, Sarah,
Yes.
I talked to Virginia Stokes last night. John
Good.
was up in the background, and John is doing well right now. In fact, he's doing really well. He's just doing well. He's that's a very good situation for them over at Harmony, where they're staying right now. So that's a blessing.
Thank you for sharing that. Our sick Rotarians, we always want to know how they're doing and let them know that we love them and we miss them. So thank you, everyone. With that, I'm going to turn the program over to Ray Little to introduce our speaker for today. Ray?
All right. Thank you, Sarah. Known Jack for years and truly a great public servant, great friend as well, and looking forward to hearing his talk today, especially as we face this pandemic. And I just give a little biography on Jack. Jack grew up in a small town in Texas, but has called Middle Tennessee home since graduating from Texas State University with a degree in education. Jack and his wife, Deanna, the circuit court judge for the 21st Judicial District, are raising their 3 children in Franklin, where they attend Grace Chapel Church. Jack and Deanna met over 30 years ago at a Young Republican function, sharing the same conservative values and the same dream of a future filled with faith and family. Jack was first elected to the Tennessee State Senate in 2006. He was proud to cast his first vote in the Senate for the first Republican lieutenant governor in 140 years. After only 2 years, he was appointed as chairman of the Government Operations Committee. A year later, he was named chairman of the Commerce and Labor Committee, and he has served as Commerce Committee chairman for 10 years until December of 2018, when he was elected by his Republican colleagues as the Senate Majority Leader. Good choice on their behalf. Most recently, he was appointed by Governor Bill Lee to serve on the Economic Recovery Group, a public-private partnership established in April 2020 in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. This group is tasked with building guidance and overseeing the safe reopening of Tennessee's economy. Senator Johnson proudly represents the 23rd District, which includes all of Williamson County. And when the day's work done, Jack enjoys spending time with his family, playing guitar and piloting private aircraft. And I want to share with you that Jack has helped in so many ways in not only Williamson County, but Brentwood, instrumental in us getting electronic meetings, which has been vital to us being able to meet and vote on things without endangering the public and or our own commission members and or commission members' spouses or family members. Jack has helped and fielded my calls over the last few weeks, and I know his days have been long, and has helped with anything we've needed, and been a great liaison with local government and the governor and different state offices. So I just want to say that even in this time of crisis, his servant leadership has been at the forefront. So now, without further ado, I present to you your Senate Majority Leader for the state of Tennessee, Jack Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor Little. Great to see you, and great to
see you.
Everyone else. I wish we were able to do this in person. I was certainly looking forward to doing it, but this is almost as good. And like many of you, I'm kind of getting used to this Zoom thing, Zoom, WebEx, all these different forums. And we're conducting a lot of state government, as I know City of Brentwood and Williams County and other cities in the 23rd Senate District are doing it as well. I've got quite a bit I want to cover with you, and I'm not sure, Sarah, Devin, if we have time, I'd certainly be glad to take some questions towards the end if time permits. So I want to take you back to January of this year when we convened the second session of the 111th General Assembly. We are constitutionally required to convene on the second Tuesday in January every year. And we did that, and I was fond of telling folks that Tennessee was in the best fiscal condition we've ever been in. We had huge surpluses. We had consistently been reducing taxes on Tennesseans. And while we did that, our revenues were going up. We had a very strong economy, the lowest unemployment rate ever recorded in the history of Tennessee. So there was a lot to be excited about, a lot to be proud about. Governor Lee delivered his State of the State address, where he submitted a budget, as he's constitutionally required to do, in early February of this year. And he set forth a very robust agenda legislatively and budget-wise to continue cutting taxes and making our economy as strong as it could be. Late last year, U.S. News and World Report rated Tennessee as the best fiscally managed state in the United States. So we're very proud of that. Well, how things can change in a very short period of time. As the COVID-19 outbreak began to affect our nation and ultimately Tennessee. As many of you know, the first documented case of COVID-19 in the state of Tennessee was here in Williamson County. And as those cases began to grow and the numbers began to escalate, obviously we had to stop everything we were doing and change our strategy and what we were doing to deal with this pandemic and its effects on Tennessee. So Governor Lee, in conjunction with the General Assembly, what we decided to do, and this was roughly mid-March, we were well into our legislative session. We were working on bills. We were working on the budget. We had to pretty much stop all of that, put all of that on hold to figure out how we were going to handle this pandemic. And so a decision was made that we would recess our General Assembly to a date certain. That date ended up being June 1, because we were in violation of CDC guidelines by having our General Assembly. We have 99 House members, plus lots of staff. We have 33 senators. And just convening in our respective chambers, we were in violation of CDC guidelines. So what we did is we put everything on hold, and we basically undertook an effort to get a budget passed for the next fiscal year, 2021 fiscal year. Our fiscal year ends on June 30th. The new year starts on July 1st. Because we knew that we needed to get out of the Capitol, we needed to recess, but we didn't want to do so until we knew we had a budget in place for the next fiscal year. That's the one constitutional responsibility we have as a General Assembly, is to pass a budget, and constitutionally it has to be a balanced budget. And so we did that, and when you compare the budget that we passed, that what we refer to as the emergency budget, when you compare it to the budget that Governor Lee had proposed back in early February, it was very, very different. The coming fiscal year budget projections that we had anticipated revenue growth of about 3.75%. And that's how we do our budget in the state. We base it on projected revenues. We have a funding board that's made up of economists, our constitutional officers, and obviously the governor and members of his cabinet. And they make revenue projections. We're always very conservative in those projections. And then that's what we base our budget on. And then if we end up collecting more revenue than we projected, then we book that as non-recurring money that we can use for capital expenditures and that type of thing. So that's how our process works. So we went from a budget projection revenue growth of 3.75%. We passed an emergency budget anticipating zero growth. So we stripped out all new spending and basically passed a budget that was a baseline budget with no spending increases. And we hoped that that would be enough of a cut or enough of a budget reduction so that we wouldn't have to open it back up. Well, as the pandemic began to escalate in Tennessee, one of the first things that the governor did was what he referred to as the Unified Command Group. And this was a group of healthcare experts, legislators, constitutional officers, and so forth that would meet daily to basically evaluate the effects of the pandemic from a health standpoint and efforts to mitigate that. Now I'm going to attempt to share my screen here and give you some data that is, let's see here, bear with me here. So this is information that you can find on the state website. It's tn.gov. And this will give you a kind of an overview of where we are. This information is current as of yesterday. And you can see that the total case numbers. It may be my screen is covered up by some of the over here. On the left-hand side, we're roughly somewhere over 16,000 total cases in the state of Tennessee right now. On the left-hand side, you can see the breakdown by county. Obviously, Davidson and Shelby counties, they're larger. They have more documented cases than some other areas of the state. Interestingly, you see Trousdale County here, which is a small county from a population standpoint, but it's number 3 in terms of confirmed cases. That's because they have a prison, they have a correctional facility there. And you may have seen in the news, we've had a couple of instances where we've had fairly rampant outbreaks in our prison population. The good news is many of those that were tested positive were asymptomatic. They never experienced any symptoms, but there was a high concentration of cases there. So coming on down, you can see that Williamson County, we're at 456 confirmed cases. We've had 10 deaths in Williamson County. And if you look at these numbers, you see Sumner, Rutherford, and when you look at the statewide map, you can see Middle Tennessee is where the bulk of our cases are, certainly with Davidson County and then some of the surrounding collar counties around Tennessee. So again, if you want to keep track of this information, everything I'm showing you is publicly accessible on the state website. It's tn.gov, and you can monitor that information there. Now I will come back to here. And so anyway, the Unified Command Group, they are responsible for things like making sure our hospital capacity is not overwhelmed, making sure that healthcare providers and others have adequate access to PPE, personal protective equipment, making sure that our ventilator capacity was not being overwhelmed. And they've done a good job. And fortunately, Tennessee, like other parts of the country, have not hit anywhere near what some of the models projected that we could have had. In Tennessee, we haven't had any instances where someone who needs a ventilator hasn't been able to get one. We've had hospital beds for anyone that needed one, and that's very, very good news. I'll give you an interesting statistic here that I just found out yesterday. I was on a call with the administration. Tennessee is one of only 3 states that is in the top 10 in terms of per capita testing. So when you look at the number of tests, COVID-19 tests that we've performed in Tennessee per capita, we're in the top 10. And when you look at the number of deaths that we've had in Tennessee per capita, we're in the bottom 10. So both good places to be. And there's only 3 states that are in the top 10 in terms of per capita testing and the bottom 10 in terms of deaths per capita. Tennessee is one, Alaska is the other, and I'm not sure who the third one is. So again, our management, mitigation of the virus, I think has been very good, and that deserves kudos to our governor, his administration, our healthcare industry across the state, and the good work that they've done. Now, obviously, we've shifted now to getting our economy reopened, and what Governor Lee did is, as Mayor Little pointed out, I was appointed as majority leader. I was appointed to serve on the governor's economic recovery group. The House Majority Leader, William Lamberth from Sumner County, is also on that group. And this is a group made up of industry leaders, business leaders from across the state, everything from the Retail Association, the Hospitality Association, which includes restaurants, hotels, and others, industry groups from across the state. And it's about 40 or 50 people, and we meet regularly and as a whole, and then we have subgroups, working groups that are meeting frequently as well. And the primary purpose of this group is to come up with the safety guidelines for industries and businesses to be able to open. And hopefully you're already seeing some of these. If you've been out to a restaurant lately, you know that those guidelines are in place relative to servers wearing masks, having the tables 6 feet apart. either having disposable disposable menus or menus that are sanitized after every use, no condiments on the table, these types of common sense safety measures that are being put in place. Those all came from the governor's economic recovery group. And we know that our retail establishments have opened, restaurants are now at 50% capacity. This is all being dictated by the CDC guidelines, which you can find on the White House website, because the White House has formed this Opening America group, and they've come up with some standards that states and local governments can use in terms of opening their economy back up. And we are now in phase one, what is considered to be phase one. And there's 3 phases before we ultimately get back to no restrictions. And you move from phase 1 to phase 2 if you have 14 consecutive days of either stable or declining metrics. And that's measured by hospitalizations, number of new cases per capita, obviously ventilator capacity and those types of things. Good news is Tennessee is in phase 1 now. Our numbers are steady or declining. And so we're optimistic that we will be able to transition into phase 2, which just loosens the restrictions on businesses even more than they are now. So we're hoping that will take place. I want to show you, if I can get it pulled up here. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to go to, and I'm not seeing it on my options here, but just go to, if you just Google Tennessee Pledge, you can find the, now I've messed up my screen here, bear with me. Dadgummit. Well, okay. Well, I'm not sure. Am I still on the screen? Okay, am I good? Because mine's kind of messed up on this side. But I encourage you to go to Tennessee Pledge, or to Google Tennessee Pledge, and it has industry-specific guidelines that you can find for restaurants, retail, worship, places of worship, churches, and for pretty much large office buildings that don't have much interaction with the general public. There's a lot of really, really good information there in the Tennessee Pledge. And that's what we're asking businesses to agree to take the Tennessee Pledge, to post that. It includes things like for employees in your business, asking simple questions. Are you coughing? Do you feel okay? Doing temperature checks, asking them to do a temperature check at home before they come to work. And then for customers, various types of guidance and safety guidelines. This is very important because we have a dual challenge here. One is to get our economy opened up in a safe manner so that businesses can operate safely. But we also, and it's equally as important, that we instill a degree of confidence in the general public that they can go to a business and patronize that business. Because just because we've allowed restaurants to open at 50% capacity doesn't mean people are going to feel safe about going to a restaurant. And so there's equal responsibility on all parties to take this Tennessee Pledge and adhere to it so that customers feel safe going to a business, employees feel safe going to work, and we can get our economy going again. Now, I want to get back to the budget and the resumption of our legislative session. As I mentioned, we recessed until June 1st. That was somewhat of an arbitrary date because we didn't know when we would be able to safely come back. But we are going to reconvene our session on June 1st. Committees will begin meeting the week prior, beginning Tuesday, the 26th of May, which is the day after Memorial Day. The Senate Finance Committee will meet that week, so we can start a re-examination of the budget. Now, here's the bad news, is the emergency budget that we passed back in March before we recessed. As I told you, it assumed a 0 growth rate for the coming fiscal year. That's not going to be enough. We are going to have to make further cuts to our budget. Commissioner of Finance and Administration earlier this week released some revenue numbers, and it's devastating. There's just no good way to say it. It's bad. We generate roughly 65% of our revenue from sales tax collections. When you shut businesses down and there's no economy taking place, you're not going to generate nearly as much sales tax revenue. Some businesses, like grocery stores, have seen a significant increase in their sales tax collections. That's good. But when you look at car sales, Other businesses, retail, small retail that's been shut down, the bad far outweighs the good. For the month of March, which is the data that we have, and keep in mind, the shutdown was only in place for roughly half of the month of March, but we had a 40% reduction in revenue collections. 40%, that's staggering. We haven't seen anything like that in the last 100 years, at least. Some of that is due to the fact that franchise and excise tax and business tax collections were deferred until July, just as your federal income taxes are not due until July. We'll get some of that back, hopefully, as businesses begin filing those returns, but we know that they're going to be negatively impacted as well. We don't have a definitive number right now, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but this is important because it's your money, it's taxpayer money. We have to close our current fiscal year, so the 1920 fiscal year, which ends June 30th, and that has to be balanced. And then we have to pass a prospective balanced budget for the coming fiscal year. Now, this all began to take place in March, as I said. So April, May, June, which is effectively the fourth quarter of our current fiscal year, is going to be impacted by this. The estimates are anywhere from $500 to $700 million that we're going to be short in the current fiscal year, which is staggering. And then as much as $1 billion short in the coming fiscal year. Now, again, those are projections. As the more data we get as we go along, the better we'll be able to nail those numbers down. So when we go back on June 1st and begin with committees on March 26th, these are the things that we're going to have to look at. Here's some good news. As I said, Tennessee was in the best fiscal condition it's ever been in as we came into this. Unlike states like New York, California, New Jersey, Illinois, they were not in very good fiscal shape to begin with. And then this happened. Tennessee, on the other hand, we were in a very strong fiscal position. Our rainy day fund, which is our state savings account for emergencies, and it's certainly raining right now, was at $1.45 billion. It's the highest it's ever been, and that's good. So that is a cushion that we have that we can dip into if necessary to both balance the current fiscal year. And by the way, we're not just going to rely on the rainy day fund. The governor has already done things like put in a hiring freeze, asking all state agencies and departments to stop any unnecessary spending. All those things have been done to try to mitigate this. But unquestionably, we're going to have to dip into that rainy day fund just to be able to close the current fiscal year and have it balanced. And then we'll make cuts as necessary into the coming fiscal year. We had proposed a nice pay raise for our teachers, for our state employees. Obviously, there was some discretionary spending in the budget that we're going to take out. Pretty much everything is on the table. We have implemented a hiring freeze. There's no discussion right now of state employee layoffs or furloughs, and hopefully we won't have to even contemplate that. But bottom line is, unlike the federal government, we can't print money, we can't run a deficit. We have to balance our budget year in and year out, and we will do that. We will get that done, and hopefully over the coming months, this economy will get back going. We were in a good position coming into this, so hopefully we will recover quickly. Now, in addition to the budget, whenever we come back into session, there will be other legislative matters that we will need to tend to, either relative to the COVID mitigation, economic recovery. We had the tornadoes in Nashville. There was damage with that. There might be some things that we need to look at relative to that. And to further complicate things, this is an election year, right? So we have our primary elections in August. We have our general election in November. We need to make sure that we can safely hold an election in Tennessee. So we're working in constant or frequent contact with our Secretary of State, Trey Hargett, our coordinator of elections statewide, who is Mark Goins, to look at anything, that they may need in order to conduct elections. The average age of a poll worker in the state of Tennessee is 68. This is part of the vulnerable population. So understandably, many people who might otherwise enjoy working polls and doing that every election year are not going to feel safe doing so. So we may need to give the Secretary of State some tools to be able to do whatever he needs to do to make sure we can have a safe election. The Senate very much feels like we need to focus solely on the budget. on COVID-related legislation that is needed, and for the most part, let everything else wait till we come back in January. There's a lot of legislation out there that's pending, that was making its way through the legislative process. And we're going to really be, we're going to use a lot of scrutiny in terms of legislation that we take up. We want to get in and out of this resumed legislative session in hopefully no more than 3 weeks. Because again, if someone gets diagnosed positive, a member of the Senate or a member of the House, that creates a very, very complicated situation. Our Senate clerk, our facilities management team, they're putting measures in place so that we'll be able to meet. We're spacing our desk out in the Senate chamber, doing the same thing in the House chamber. In our committee rooms, we're putting sanitation efforts into place so that we can meet safely and be able to resume our business and get this budget situation taken care of. So I'll wrap it up and be happy to take questions if there's time, if I haven't gone too long. But do please stay in contact. We've had lots of calls from people all over the district regarding unemployment claims for people that have filed for unemployment, having trouble getting that. If there's businesses that are filing for the PPP loans, that's more of a federal matter, but we'll be happy to transition over to the appropriate resources with our federal delegation to help with that, or anything else. If you have questions about your business, then certainly reach out to us and we'll be glad to get you that information. Good news is this has been a bad thing for our state and it's been a bad thing for our nation. But I've been so proud of our governor, his cabinet, and my colleagues in the General Assembly, working with our local officials like Mayor Little, Mayor Rogers Anderson. It's been a real team effort to try to get us through this. And hopefully we'll get this behind us soon and get our economy back and get back to the way we were. So Sarah, Devin, hopefully I haven't rambled on too long, but I'd be happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
Senator, you did great. We've got about 5-6 minutes left. If people have questions, you can type them in. You can raise your hand and I'll process that. Senator, we have one question already, and that is, could you give us an update on what's the latest with the school voucher program?
Yeah, so Governor Lee proposed, and we did pass an ESA program for children that are in failing schools in Nashville and Shelby County. Part of the question is when we pass that legislation, effectively, if a child that is zoned to a failing school, and there's a definition for what a failing school is, that they would be eligible to get ESA money, educational savings account money, to attend a private school. But we didn't want to fiscally harm the school because the money follows the child, right? So if a child moves to a private school, we were going to backfill that money to either the Metro Nashville school system or the county school system so that there was no negative fiscal impact. Not only do they lose the child, so they don't have to provide a teacher, a desk, books, or anything to the child, but they get all of the money for that child. So it's going to provide a financial improvement to those districts that lost a child to an ESA scholarship. The fiscal impact on that's about $38 million. Governor hoped to implement that and begin providing scholarships to kids this fall. But like everything else, that money is on the table. We may not be able to implement that program this fall. We may have to put it off because anything and everything is on the table in terms of money. If we're not going to backfill that money, we won't implement the program. We could. Governor Lee has the authority to provide the scholarship. The kid gets to go to the private school and then not backfill the money to the district. We won't implement the program unless we can backfill that money. But it's a sizable amount of money, and so it's on the chopping block like everything else.
We have another question for you, and that is, what is your position on children going back to school in the fall? And is there any conversation as well about high school sports?
Yeah, great questions. Relative to kids going back to school in the fall, I hope so. I'm not a healthcare expert. We'll have to rely on those folks. One of the things we know about this particular virus is that children are less affected by the virus in terms of contracting it, or if they have it, being asymptomatic. The problem is, though, while the child may be exposed to the virus, not have symptoms, not get sick, they still may go home to a parent or a grandparent or a loved one who could be vulnerable. Right now, it's safe to say that the plan is for schools to resume in the fall or August, as they normally would. And I think that's the plan for right now. But certainly we will continue to monitor the caseload or the case rate across the state as we do that. Same thing with high school sports. When you're talking about football practices that are outside, again, with the younger population, we want to be able to get those things going again. I wish I could give you a definite yes. I can't, but I would say that's the direction we're heading.
Thank you. We have another question, and that is similar, but as it relates to the state's policies and kind of the reopening of everything, when will churches be allowed to meet in person and open again?
Sure. Interesting thing here is the governor never ordered churches not to meet. That was never an executive order. They were encouraged to not meet. You get into some constitutional issues there relative to right to worship and assembly and that type of thing. Churches, and most, I'm not aware of a church that continue to have corporate worship in person. There may have been some across the state. They were encouraged to do those virtually, and the vast majority of churches have done that. I mentioned the Tennessee Pledge. There are safety guidelines in the Tennessee Pledge that are recommended for places of worship. They include, again, reduced capacity, spacing between families, sanitizing surfaces, all the normal common sense kind of things. And let me say that a constant theme you will see through all of this is if you are in that vulnerable population, meaning you're older, or you have underlying health conditions, you're immunocompromised, any of those types of things, that you're encouraged to continue to stay at home and not go, to places where others would be meeting in larger groups. So again, refer you to that Tennessee Pledge, which is a great document, has a very thorough guidance for businesses, places of worship, and so forth.
Thank you. We got another question, and that is related to the COVID, the pandemic, and hospitalizations. And it's we're not seeing that the current number of hospitalizations is a published number. Is that something the state's tracking? And if so, why is that information not currently available?
Great question. It is being monitored and it is available. And I'm sorry, I don't have the exact number in front of me. But we are publishing, or the Unified Command is publishing, the State Department of Health is publishing available capacity. And again, don't hold me to this number, but you can find hospital capacity and ventilator capacity, those numbers, not by specific hospital, but aggregated across the state. And we are well below capacity, both in terms of beds and ventilators across the state. And we're prepared, and we've put in place measures to make sure we're prepared in the event that there is a spike. You may hear people talking about, is this going to come back in the fall? Are we going to have a resurgence as we continue to try to develop a vaccine and therapeutics? And that could happen. That's why testing is so incredibly important. And by the way, I didn't mention, I hope you know this, but anybody can get a test. Tests are free and anybody can get one. We have drive-through testing stations in Williamson County and other places across the state, or you can go to the county health department, including right here in Williamson County, Monday through Friday, and get a test. You don't need a doctor's note. You don't need to be symptomatic. Now, use common sense. If you're not symptomatic and you're otherwise healthy, you probably don't need to get a test. But if for some reason you want one, you can go get one. That's going to be important. Testing is going to be with us for the foreseeable future, as will the safety guidelines, as we continue to try to find a vaccine. So Governor Lee has said, when in doubt, get a test. If you were exposed, if you find out you're around someone who did have it and you want to go get a test, even if you're asymptomatic, you can certainly.
Thank you.
Very
Well,
good,
thank
Sarah.
you. What'd you say, Devin? I'm sorry.
Well, it's all yours. We're at the hour.
Oh, Well, thank you so much, Senator Johnson, for joining us today. It's been very enlightening, and it's good to hear that things are under expectations in some areas, and saddening to see that there's things that have changed. But I know our great state and leaders like yourself will get us through. We have complete faith in you guys, and we appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure being with you again.
Well, we're so happy to have you. Just as a reminder, to all of our Rotary Board meeting members, if you guys wouldn't mind going to, as Senator Johnson recommended, the Tennessee Pledge website and read through that information so that we can make as informed decisions as we have prior to the meeting, and come with your suggestions so that we can operate in a way that keeps everyone healthy. So if y'all do that, I'd appreciate it. And with that, there's nothing else for the good of Rotary. Same level, people. It is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Good to see everybody.
Bye.